That's not mythology. That's America. Stick around, because this is the full story, and trust me, it's wilder than any movie. And hey, if you're into history that actually keeps you hooked, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell. We drop videos like this every week, and you do not want to miss what's coming. All right, let's get into it. Long before the United States was even a concept, this land was home to hundreds of indigenous nations: the Cherokee, the Iroquois, the Sioux, the Navajo. Civilizations with complex cultures, trade networks, and governments. That's a history stretching back over 15,000 years, and it deserves its own video. But the story most people know begins in the early 1600s, when European settlers started arriving on the eastern coast. The British colonies that took root would eventually grow into 13 distinct, opinionated, and increasingly frustrated communities. And what made them frustrated? Taxes. It was really about power. The British Crown kept passing laws: the Stamp Act, the Townshend Acts, the Tea Act, taxing the colonists without giving them any say in Parliament. No taxation without representation wasn't just a slogan. It was a declaration of identity. I don't say this often, but if you actually like this kind of thing, subscribe. You'll probably like the next videos too. So, tensions boiled over famously in Boston in 1773 when colonists disguised as Mohawk Indians dumped 342 chests of British tea into the harbor. The Boston Tea Party wasn't just an act of protest, it was a statement: we are our own people. By 1775, shots were being fired. The Revolutionary War had begun. And on July 4, 1776, the Continental Congress ratified the Declaration of Independence, a document written largely by Thomas Jefferson, announcing to the world that these colonies were now free and sovereign states. It was audacious, it was dangerous. And honestly, most people thought they'd lose. But with the brilliant military leadership of General George Washington and a crucial alliance with France, the Americans pulled off one of the greatest upsets in world history. By 1783, Britain officially recognized the United States of America, a new nation, born from rebellion. Now what? Here's what's fascinating about the founding era: nobody really knew what they were doing. There was no blueprint for a democratic republic at this scale. The founding fathers, Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Hamilton, Madison, were basically making it up as they went, arguing fiercely about every detail. The Constitution, ratified in 1788, was a masterpiece of compromise. A federal government with three branches: executive, legislative, judicial, each designed to check the power of the others. The Bill of Rights, added in 1791, guaranteed freedoms of speech, religion, press, and more. George Washington became the first president, and when he voluntarily stepped down after 2 terms, the world was stunned. Kings didn't do that. He set a precedent that would define American democracy for generations. But the young nation had a massive contradiction baked into its foundation. The Declaration said all men are created equal, and yet enslaved Black Americans numbering in the hundreds of thousands were held in bondage, powering the Southern economy through forced labor. This tension would simmer and eventually explode. Meanwhile, the country was expanding rapidly. The Louisiana Purchase of 1803 doubled the size of the U.S. overnight. Settlers pushed west under the banner of Manifest Destiny, the belief that Americans were destined to stretch from sea to shining sea. For the indigenous peoples already living on that land, this expansion was catastrophic. The Trail of Tears in the 1830s, where tens of thousands of Native Americans were forcibly relocated, resulting in thousands of deaths, remains one of the darkest chapters in American history. By the mid-1800s, the issue of slavery had become impossible to ignore. The country was literally splitting in two: northern states increasingly opposed to slavery, Southern states whose entire economy depended on it. In 1860, Abraham Lincoln, a relatively unknown Illinois lawyer turned politician, was elected president. He didn't even appear on the ballot in most Southern states. Within months, 11 Southern states had seceded, forming the Confederate States of America. The Civil War that followed was the bloodiest conflict in American history. More than 620,000 soldiers died, more than all other American wars combined up to that point. Families were torn apart, cities were burned. The country teetered on the edge of permanent fracture. But in 1863, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring enslaved people in Confederate states to be free. It was a moral turning point as much as a military one. The Union prevailed. The Confederate forces surrendered in April 1865. But just days after the war's end, Lincoln was assassinated at Ford's Theater by John Wilkes Booth, a tragedy that robbed the nation of the leader best positioned to guide its healing. The period that followed, Reconstruction, attempted to rebuild the South and integrate formerly enslaved people into American society. Progress was made, black men voted, held office, built communities. But Reconstruction was undermined by violent white supremacist groups and eventually abandoned, leaving a legacy of systemic racial inequality that would persist for generations. From the ashes of the Civil War, something remarkable happened. America industrialized at a breakneck pace. Steel, railroads, oil, electricity, the late 1800s were the age of invention. Thomas Edison, Nikola Tesla, Alexander Graham Bell. The country was transforming from an agrarian society into an industrial powerhouse. Millions of immigrants poured through Ellis Island, Italians, Irish, Eastern Europeans, Jewish families fleeing persecution, adding layers of culture, labor, and ambition to the American story. By 1900, the U.S. was already one of the world's largest economies. Then came the World Wars. The U.S. entered World War I in 1917, tipping the balance toward the Allies. But it was World War II that cemented America's place as a global superpower. After the attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941, the U.S. threw its full industrial and military might into the conflict, eventually helping defeat both Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945 ended the Pacific War and introduced the world to the terrifying age of nuclear weapons. What followed was the Cold War, a decades-long standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union. Democracy versus communism. Capitalism versus collectivism. Both sides armed to the teeth with nuclear weapons, both racing to dominate space, technology, and global influence. The stakes couldn't have been higher. In 1969, in one of humanity's greatest achievements, American astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed on the moon. America had won the space race and declared to the world that there was nothing it couldn't do when it set its mind to it. But while America projected strength abroad, the fight for equality at home was far from over. The civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s was one of the most powerful grassroots movements in American history. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, John Lewis, and thousands of ordinary Americans marched, protested, and demanded that the promise of equality written in the Declaration of Independence finally be fulfilled for Black Americans. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 and Voting Rights Act of 1965 were landmark victories. But progress came at a brutal cost: bombings, beatings, assassinations. Dr. King himself was murdered in 1968. Women had fought for and won the right to vote in 1920. The feminist movements of the 60s and 70s pushed for equal pay and workplace rights. The LGBTQ+ rights movement gained momentum from the Stonewall riots in 1969 onward. America was constantly being pushed by its own people to live up to its founding ideals. The Vietnam War shattered public trust in government. Watergate, the scandal that forced President Nixon to resign in 1974, deepened that cynicism. The country that had stood on the moon was struggling to stand up straight at home. This was a massive story to tell, and there's so much more to dig into. If you want deep dives into specific eras, the Civil War, the Civil Rights Movement, the Cold War, the Founding Fathers, drop a comment below and let us know what you want next. If this video gave you something, a new perspective, a fact you didn't know, or just a good way to spend 13 minutes, please hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel more than you know. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit subscribe, hit the bell, and we'll see you in the next one. History isn't just the past. It's the story we're still writing. Stay curious.